Om. 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 Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Narayana. Hari Om. Today we'll be reflecting on verse number 56. I'll start by chanting and share some thoughts on it. Sarvakarmanyapi sada kurvanno matvyapashrayah matprasadatavapnoti shashvatam padamavyayam. Beautiful verse. This verse is actually a summary. Bhagavan is nearing the end of his teachings. So this verse is a summary verse. He is summarizing all the thoughts he has shared since verse number 41. That was Brahmana Kshatriya Visham, from that verse onwards up until the previous verse, verse number 55. So we'll do a quick recap on what was shared in this section. From verse number 41 to around verse number 48, Bhagavan has said, engage in your duties. Take up your duties. Know your nature, and in accordance with your personality, engage in your duties. And how do we engage in those duties? Verse number 46, he said, Swakarmana tamabhyarchya. Offer it unto the Lord. Yes, you have to do your duties. We have to do them. But what is the altar? It is not the result of the action. So we are not performing an action to enjoy the result of the action. No doership, no enjoyership. We are performing it because it is our duty, and we are performing it as an offering unto the Lord. And also, let us not get distracted by doing paradharma, somebody else's dharma. We have to do our swadharma. Once this is done, Bhagavan says, we gain chitta shuddhi. From there on, verse number 49, Bhagavan says, with chitta shuddhi comes the opportunity to engage in listening and reflecting upon these teachings. So once the mind is quietened, we turn inward and we get the opportunity to listen and reflect on these teachings. That's the part in verse number 49 where he says, Sanyasena gacchati. After reflection comes the stage when we focus on internalizing this message. So there, Bhagavan has talked about the contemplation that we engage in, and that is from verse number 50 to verse number 53. And then he says, once we do this perfectly, we do karma yoga, and then we engage in shravana, manana, contemplation. Where are we? We attain to our true nature. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So we get to know our eternal self, the infinite nature. At this point, the teaching is complete, but maybe Bhagwan saw a question mark on Arjuna's face, like we all do. Even when it comes to summary, we look up to Bhagwan and say, Bhagwan, but how do I do this? And Bhagwan takes us back one more time to do a quick recap, which is this verse. So we'll now analyze each pada of this verse. He says, Sarva karmanyapi sada, always engaging in our duties. What to do? Api. There's more to do. What do I need to do, Bhagwan? You have to be devoted to me, the Lord. We have to take refuge in the Lord. So the first line he says, engage in our duties. This has already been said, but what is Bhagwan adding here? The direction, the dimension Bhagwan is adding is now engage in these actions seeking refuge in me. Now let's dwell on what does seeking refuge in me mean. Gurudev here has highlighted refuge is being devoted to the Lord. If in the earlier chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, we would have probably translated refuge as depending on the Lord, not depending on the world for happiness or completeness, but depending on the Lord for completeness and happiness. But at this stage where we have understood what is the meaning of the Lord, it is my true nature and knowing that everything in this world is pervaded by Bhagwan and Bhagwan alone. So here, when Swamiji was teaching us this verse, he said, taking refuge means one, knowing that everything that I define as I, my body, my pranas, my mind, my intellect, everything is nothing but Bhagwan and His grace. And the second part to it is knowing that this entire Jagat, Yena Sarvam Idam Tatam, everything that I call as this is nothing but Lord and Lord alone. So seeking refuge means, number one, working with this attitude that by His grace alone, by His blessings alone, I have these equipments to act, to serve, and then to see Bhagwan in everything and serve with that attitude. So that is the powerful meaning of that phrase, Mad Vyapashrayah. Ashrayah, seeking refuge. Vipashrayah, total refuge. It's Bhagwan and Bhagwan alone from both perspectives. And that's what Gurudev says here beautifully in his commentary that we read this morning. He says, it is an intelligent process of identification with the higher and detachment from our senses, our agency of doership and enjoyership, and also our contact with the outer world, our relationship with the outer world. So both ways. Knowing that everything is Bhagwan and Bhagwan alone. So line 1 says, do our duties and do it completely dedicated, seeking refuge in the Lord. When we act like this, what happens? By His grace. So again, now Bhagwan is shifting. Last time he said, do your Swadharma. Now Bhagwan is shifting to, what does doing our Swadharma mean? Doing our Swadharma means doing our duties dedicated, seeking refuge in the Lord. And then by His grace, we attain the Shashvatam Avyayam Padam. We'll dwell on the word His grace. What does grace feel like? Guruji says, grace is that which makes the impossible possible, that which makes the difficult happen. That is grace. And to now recognize that it is by His grace that everything happens, meaning that doership, that agency has completely dissolved. There is total and complete conviction that everything is the Lord and everything is His grace, His power that manifests in this world. There is when Swamiji was teaching us this verse, he so beautifully said, when we say do your bit and leave the rest, and there is God's promise that He will take care of us. He will leave the rest. He'll take care of it. It makes it seem like we have done most of the work and we have left a little bit to Bhagwan. Actually, it is not like that. We do our best, which is wee bit. That's all we can do. And then there is total surrender. And Bhagwan does the majority of the work in taking care of us. And he does this when we surrender unto him totally and fully. So this is a verse of feeling, having that conviction that yes, the path that Bhagwan is talking about in this verse is through karma, you gain the ultimate liberation. How? Do your karmas, seeking refuge in the Lord, being recognizing that everything is Bhagwan and Bhagwan alone and serving Him, and by His grace, we will attain liberation. The last quarter of this verse says, Shashvatam Padam Avyayam. Shashvatam, eternal. Avyayam, unchanging. There are destinations where we can reach, which is eternal but probably constantly changing. For example, our own samsara, right? It seems to be eternally there, but never a source of unchanging bliss. But here, Bhagwan promises us that if we work and live in this manner, He will, by His grace, take us to that unchanging, eternal destination, which is knowing our true nature. Once we know our true nature as the infinite, non doer, changeless self, nobody can shake us from there. That is total freedom. Yeah. Any, um, what other thoughts did I want to share? Did that make sense? Did the verse come through? Okay. All right. Also, I'll read the one line summary I have written for myself here. And that says, Bhagwan summarizes the thought process of the last few verses. So he's taken us from verse number 41 to 55 in this. The path is Karma Yoga. Initially, in the first few verses of Karma Yoga, Bhagwan's focus has been on Swadharma. Do your duty. And then he guides us. Through doing our duties, we attain Chitta Shuddhi, quietude of mind, which enables us to turn inwards, reach out to these teachings. And then when we reflect, listen, reflect on these teachings, it leads us to a state where we are now contemplating, and that's the map to end in liberation, knowing our true nature. And in this process, he adds this focus about, while doing karma yoga, seek refuge in Bhagwan, seek refuge in his teachings. Seeking refuge also means to follow his teachings, right? And with that, he has his promise that we will reach the destination, which is moksha, liberation, eternal joy, my true nature, ourself. So that is what I had to share on this verse. Vivekji was sharing in the Yaksha Prashna class that when he was asking the students to reflect, he'd give them 3 minutes and most of them would finish in 1 or 1.5 minutes. I feel like them right now. 15 minutes, that's a lot to share on this verse. But I hope the meaning of this verse comes through for each of us. It's a beautiful verse to dwell on as Bhagwan is completing his teachings on this in this chapter. What can we give for an application? Think about what refuge feels like for us. Swamiji says, refuge is like how a child feels when his mother is around. Complete surrender, right? He knows his mom is around. She will take care. She is there. And he does his business. All he has to do is check if she is around. And that's all the child is focused on. As long as the mom's around, no fear. Fearlessly, with complete concentration, with complete dedication, the child just is. That kind of a, feeling of being with Bhagwan, being in Bhagwan, and doing everything for Bhagwan. Think about what a refuge feels like. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.